Hi everybody, welcome to another episode. Stephen's got a belter for us at the moment. A few people have been getting on his nerves a little bit lately because they've not been making enough time for things, which means they're not prioritising their time well enough. Is that a fair reflection of what you're feeling, Stephen? And do you want to expand on that?
No, absolutely. Welcome, Oliver. It's something that I've sort of been feeling for quite a long time and having a lot of conversations with various other people. And I guess would like to throw it out there on the podcast. And that is, when we say we haven't got enough time, is it that we haven't got enough time? Or is it that we choose to do things differently? And what I want to throw out there is sometimes it's too easy to use that line. And a lot of it comes down to people stealing your time. And if you think about the clock in terms of how it works, we can't stop the clock, we can't fast forward the clock, and we can't rewind it. So what we actually have to do is to be a little bit more effective with the time that we have and the things that we choose to do. And is this thing called people stealing your time. So someone rings you up because what they've got to talk about, they believe is really, really important. And it's far more important than what you were doing. So what it says to me is what we actually need to do as well is we need to actually be mindful that people will steal our time. So how do you manage that? How do you make sure that actually you get the things done that you actually want to do? And for me, it's about stop saying, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. You do have enough time. You've just chosen to do things differently. Does that make sense, Oliver?
100%, yeah. I mean, on many levels. So first of all, specifically with the time, I mean, it is, I think I can even accept I'm pretty guilty of this myself sometimes. As I labour on many times, I play a lot of golf, but I don't practice as much as I should. And I wonder why I don't play that well. And it's because I don't have time to do it. No, that's wrong. I don't make the time because I absolutely have got the time. Driving ranges are open till late. There's just no reasonable excuse for it. I just don't prioritise it. So that's why I like what you've said there. It's not as big enough priority for me. I think it is. So when I'm standing on the golf course not hitting good shots, right then it's a bloody massive priority for me. But then once I move further away from that, it seems like less of a priority. When I'm just sitting there, I've had a day at work or done something else for whatever reason, the thought of then doing a half an hour of training, which is really boring, to be fair, I don't enjoy it, is very easy not to do. And we fall into that whole trap of things that are incredibly easy to do, because it's very easy for me to get up, go and do that, is incredibly easy not to do, and that's where you fall into the trap. But the nice thing that I like about what you've talked about there is it falls into one of the areas I pick with people a lot on, is the excuse words. So when you say, I haven't got time, that lets you off the hook, because that's all right, I haven't got time, I couldn't possibly do it. And when you say, I really want to do this, but, that's all right, I intended to do it, but lets me off, so it's absolutely fine. And then, as I always refer to it, it's posh friend, however. You don't get away by just using a longer word for it. And things like, I can't. Oh, you definitely can. You 100% can. So that's another excuse word. And we're littered with these words that just make us feel better. When we look at ourselves in the mirror or whatever we need to do to feel better about ourselves, we can say, oh, it's all right though, because I tried. Or I'm just not like that. Or I'm just not that way. Or whatever. It's all BS. And you need to, if you're hearing this and you use any of those words, particularly try and can't, but if you also say, like Stephen says, you don't make time for it, you are lying. And you are lying to yourself, which is the worst one you can do. People think lying to other people is bad, and it is. I don't love it, but lying to yourself is the most damaging thing you can possibly do. So, yeah, I think it's peed you off, and it's obviously touched a nerve my end as well, because it's an excuse. That's what I look at it at. What do you think to that?
I love the fact that I've got you now in my camp and now you're all racked off and it's like triggered things in you as well. I love that. Yeah. No, I mean, it's also the knock-on effect that it has, Oliver. Like, if you don't make the time, what then happens is you don't give the right people the time. So what this then snowballs into is you're instead of listening to somebody when they're talking to you, you start thinking about your reply because you're thinking, I haven't got enough time for this conversation. So you end up not living in the moment as well because of the fact that you're not making enough time, you're not living in the moment, you're not actually enjoying that moment in time. And that, I think that's what really hurts me more than anything else, is the fact that what actually happens is you're not making the desired amount of time for the right people because you haven't managed time in its totality. And I think that's when it becomes a real problem, because then what happens is you can come across as insincere, you can come across as not bothered, you can come across as badly organized, you come across as not being a visionary and being unplanned. So it starts off with one thing, but it actually, once it starts to gain momentum, it's a real issue. And the problem is, imagine one day of that, but imagine 2 days, then manage a week. And then in all intents and purposes, imagine that in a month, and that month is January. So before you know it, that one bad month of sort of making that time then has a knock-on effect for 11 other months. So then you have a bad year. So it can start really small, but as it gains momentum, this thing about I haven't got enough time because I'm filling my time with things that actually, are they important enough? And are they making a difference? Or are we just doing things because we just like to do stuff? And then it falls into little things like micromanaging, because then if you're filling your time with things that actually you don't need to be doing, you then start micromanaging, and then you start to piss other people off because of the time. So that sort of spreads out a bit more, Oliver. But yeah, you can see this is really gaining momentum now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the micromanagement one is a beauty. I mean, as I said before, I don't work so often with companies these days, more with one-on-one clients, but it still comes up. And it's, I don't know if it's trust issues, fear, I don't know what the reasons are, but it just, when we're talking about making time, sometimes it's very easy to look at where you need to make time. Sometimes it will feel quite hard, because often we are dealing with people who have varying degrees of micromanagement. So as it is, in that situation, they aren't really lying to themselves, because they don't have enough time, because they're doing the work of 3 or 4 people, because they're not letting other people do the things they need to do. They're not giving them the freedom, which then brings us to that whole piece of surrounding yourself with the right people, you know? And also one of the things that just came through my mind when you were talking about this was the likelihood is, as well, when you're not listening to people, the most prevalent it will be with the people closest to you, because you think they'll understand. So in your professional space, you probably try much harder to listen and listen well. But then when you get home is when you're listening to your partner, but you're on your phone. And I've definitely been guilty of that, to be fair. Or your daughter's talking to you about something which you want to be interested in, but you've heard it 100 times, and it's about problems he's having with the girls at school and things like that. And you want to listen, but you know it's not very important to you. And you can get distracted because you've got thoughts going on of all the other things you need to do. But for her, it's the most important thing going on in her life right now. And if you aren't present in that moment, that's going to have a really damaging impact on your relationship. So that's the other thing, is you might not feel like you're doing this if you're listening to this podcast in work, but it's even worse if you're taking it outside work, and that not having enough time means you take work home. I mean, that's just never okay. I'll never support a company that pushes that, and I'll never agree with an individual who does it, because it's never necessary. If that's what you need to do, then what you're doing isn't working. And that might be really hard to hear, because you might have a nice amount of cash in the bank and you might have a business that's turning over well, but everything else in your world isn't working. So don't kid yourself. If you're working crazy hours, it's not working. You're not in a great situation. You haven't got a good job when it's not a great business. Fact. Because it's not all about money. It's about what's the point. And if you don't have enough time to do the stuff that you want to enjoy and that makes you happy, that gives you the whole purpose for it, then it's broken. You know, and that's sometimes a really tough conversation I have with a lot of my clients, is helping them understand why on earth they're doing what they're doing. And most of the time they have a really crap answer for that. So that's just what it made me think of as a wider question as well, is that whole why. And if you don't know what that is, then I think prioritizing becomes hard. and making time becomes even harder. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, Oliver. And the word that really came to mind when you were talking was the word brave. Because I think what we have to actually be is brave to make sure that actually we spend the time doing the right things. And sometimes that might mean that you have to say to someone, you know, I can't do that today, but I can do it next week, or I can't do that this week. And it's being brave so that actually the quality then comes in. I know it's something that's been talked about lots, you know, quality over quantity. But what managing your time then actually turns into is you being in the moment, but delivering better quality because you haven't filled your diary or your time with lots of things. And you've thought about, actually, I do have enough time, but only if I take some of these things out. And that's where the bravery comes from, because we all have enough time. But what actually happens is we spend time doing the wrong things, or we're spending time doing the things that actually don't add enough value, or we're spending time doing things that actually someone else could be doing. And then that sort of moves into delegation, and that's another discussion for another day. And what that then teaches on is trust, you know, which then opens up another minefield around, is it that you don't have enough time because you don't trust? And because you don't trust, you don't hand things over or get someone else to do that because you want to be doing it yourself. And then actually, that's when you don't have enough time. And, you know, it's a 4-letter word, that time, but I think it crosses over into so many elements of our life and what we do. That's why it's important. And I think that's why it's really bothered me in recent times, where people are going, I don't have enough time. And I'm saying you do have enough time, but you've made the wrong choices. Yeah. So there's something there around, if I make better choices, I will have enough time. Yeah. You know, what do you think about that, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's why I love doing this as well. I think it's going to be so valuable for people because it gets your mind racing. And the first thing that came to my mind there was there's local, there's people in the media, local and national, who don't help with this. So I remember I've seen it on a few videos. People got like a home gym. So first and foremost, these people are quite successful. They've got home gyms, which is a hell of a lot more than other people. So of course, getting to the gym is potentially easier for them. But I remember seeing this on the wall of an hour in here is 4% of your day. Is that right? Something like that. The maths is not my strong point. But what they're basically saying is they're breaking the day up into 24 hours. We do not have 24 hours in a day. Right? We definitely need to sleep. And if you're not sleeping, then you know, it's only going to go one way. So suddenly saying that, you know, 1 hour in here is whatever percentage of 24 it is, I probably have that slightly wrong. But the principle was they're trying to say an hour in here is only 1 hour of your 24. Well, that's a nonsense. You know, 8 hours minimum really is what people should be looking for. So we've already broken it down to 16. So first and foremost, that social media thing doesn't help because it's going to make you think that you're struggling, because people will be able to paint a picture which is very unrealistic. So first and foremost, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself on time. And then the other things that came in really just reinforce what I let all my clients know is life's really hard. So when you tell people what's going on in your world and you think, oh, how did I not know that? It's really hard when you don't listen to all the things which are going on in your world. It's actually incredibly easy. It's just very, very hard to do because it's about communicating with people effectively. So you said no. The power of no is unbelievable. But if you decide that, right, today I'm going to start saying no, you can't do that. You can't go out there and just keep saying no. It's not going to work. It's got to be no because with an explanation. It's communication. It's one of the things that we're most lucky to have. We have probably the best form of communication out there, don't we? You know, animals have got some funky stuff, but the fact that we are blessed with this level of communication is pretty cool. And we abuse it daily because we're too scared to have that conversation, or we jump to conclusions in our head about how someone's going to react to us saying no. And the thing is, almost every single thought that's going on in your head about what will happen when you say no is wrong because you don't know. You're guessing, and it's fear, and it will never ever be as bad as you fear. And in the few occasions where it is, you're better off out, and it's better off finding out now what this person responds to when you push back. But it's that word bravery comes in again and ease is another word, because it's incredibly easy to say no and explain why. They're just words, but it's incredibly easy to just feel safer by not doing it. And it's just very, very frustrating. So that whole point that you've made about prioritizing and making time just opens up a huge can of worms, that if you're not willing to do the things you need to do, then life is really, really complicated. But it isn't.
No, you're so right, Oliver. And it goes back to choices. And, it's about making the right choices. And saying yes and saying no with explanation works both times. Because you could say yes, I will do that, but I'm not going to be able to get to that until next week. No, I can't do that right now, but I will get to that next week. So you can use both words, and it's fine. But it's about the choices, and I think that's what really crystallizes it for me. It's the choices that we make. So when we say, the next time you say, I don't have time, what I want you to think about is, why haven't I got the time? What am I doing that I haven't got the time? And I'll just give you a quick example. Like this morning, I really, really wanted to go to the gym, but I knew that it wasn't going to absolutely work with the way the day was, but I still wanted to do some form of exercise. So I made a choice, and that choice was I was going to go for a run. I was still able to get my heart rate going. I was still able to do something that I really, really enjoy. I was still able to do something that was my choice, but it enabled me to give myself back an hour and a half. And this is what I mean about the choices. It's about the choices that we make that allow us to have the time. And It's something that, I'd like everyone to really think about is, are you doing things that you don't need to do? And can you make better choices, which enables you to have more time? Mm-hmm. You can't stop the clock, you can't fast forward it, and you can't rewind it, but you can make better choices that give you more time.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I think as a final thought as well, because I can hear a few people, I can almost see them watching or listening to this saying, yeah, it's easy for you to say, or those other people can. It's different for me. Let's just get one thing really, really, really clear. It really isn't different. Yeah, there might be, it might be a little harder for you because you might be so much further down the rabbit hole that you've got to come a long way to get back out into the light, but it doesn't mean you aren't special in that regard. So this whole belief that but that won't work for me. The amount of times I hear that, it's like, no, you're in so much more crap than everybody else because you're so much further away from where you need to be. You're going to have to make some wholesale changes, and that is something you're going to have to wake up to and get real with, because it's not easy facing up to that, because parts of your life in those situations are probably going quite well. It's normally the financial bit, but it's then realizing, what about everything else? What about my relationships? Why am I doing it? What's going to happen to me when I'm a bit old? All these other things you haven't considered. So where I get the most friction and resistance from that is from people who are financially doing very, very well. And they're, I've got to keep this going to keep that going. Well, why? Why? Have you really? I mean, now you have all that stuff. How is it making you feel? What's the difference? There's lots of really meaty questions that come from that. So just because you deem yourself successful does not mean that you can say, oh, no, I don't have enough time. You still can. You absolutely can. You just got to be brave, as you've mentioned, and I've talked about earlier, and make sacrifices, because I don't know. I imagine there are scenarios where you can ignore this and it will work out, but they are very rare. It's a lot of luck. And the not knowing bit and the not planning things is just so risky, So for the vast majority of people, that is not going to work out for you. It's not going to go well. And you do have enough time and you can make it. And everything Stephen said about prioritizing and so forth is the key to it. So, I think that's a really, really good one. For me, I feel if I go now, I'm just going to rant for another half an hour. So I'm going to stop. But have you got any final thoughts on that, Stephen, before I, jump off a cliff?
All I would just like to end with is we cannot stop, rewind, or fast forward the clock. The only way you make more time is to prioritize and manage it yourself. Give yourself that time back. And next time you say, I didn't have enough time to do that, question it.
Excellent. Lovely. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed that. And we will be back soon with another episode.